This is the agenda for today, and I'm going to go over the operative precedence, some math functions, and then you'll get a chance to code using the scanner class. You should have done that already if you went to class. But yeah, so it's just a chance for you to practice more in these topics. Can I know if you can hear me? Yan Yi, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. Yan Yi Yan, can you click on the chat on the right side and check if you can see my message? Oh, okay. Yeah, nice. So yeah, it's kind of difficult to find the chat option if this is your first time using Zoom, so it's fine. Yeah, now that can I just know if you can hear me, Yan? Can you hear me, Yan? Can I just get a yes or a no? I just want to make sure everything's right before I move on. Okay, I'll just assume that you can hear me and then I'll continue on. So yeah, so this is so today I want to go over all these, this is the agenda for today. And then I want to go over the operator precedence, some math functions. Oh, okay, so you cannot hear me. Okay, so you'll try to fix it. I can wait for you. So yeah, I know that my thing is working. Um, yeah, now I'll just continue with Christina's chat and ask her how she's doing. Yeah. So I just asked Christina what the second operator would be, I mean, second expression would be. And let's see what she thinks the answer is. Jan is having problems hearing me, so I'm just waiting for her to try and fix it. But yeah, so the operator precedence basically tells Java what operator to use first, and then like the sequence of operators to use. When there's no when it's an expression like the first one, with the multiplication and the plus, basically the multiplication, division, and modulo operators get precedence, so they are done first. So that would be 7 times 3 plus 2. So that would be 21 plus 2, and that would be 23. For the second one, it's the same thing. And since multiplication has a higher precedence order or preference, it becomes, yeah. So it's still the same thing. It's 7 times 3, 21 plus 2, which is 23. Yeah. Now I'm going to ask Christina if she is familiar with the modulo operator. So for anyone who doesn't know, the modulo operator basically works as a remainder. So since if it was 6 divided by 2, it would be the quotient of the of both the input. So 6 divided would be 3. But then since it's the modulo is a remainder, it's basically 6 divided by 2, that's 6. I mean, that's 2 times 3 is 6. So that remainder would be 0. So 6 modulo 2 would be 0. I'll just type that over to Christina. So 6 divided by 3 would be 2, but 6 modulo 3 would be 0 because the remainder is 0. Yeah. So in the beginning, people have a bit of trouble trying to figure out how modulo works, but then If you're familiar with long division, you should be able to understand that pretty quickly. So yeah, so it's basically the remainder, and then 6 modulo 2 would be 0 plus 2, that would be 2. One way of checking all these, yeah, so 6 modulo 4 would be 2. So Christina just asked me on chat about what 6 modulo 4 would be. So since it's like, can I write down here? Let me just check. Yeah, so since 6 modulo 4, 6 modulo 4, right? Okay, I don't think I can use that. So yeah, 6 modulo 4 would basically be 4 times 1, which is 4, and 6 minus 4, which is 2. So 2 would be the remainder. So 2, it will be 2. Yeah, because 4 times 1 equals 4, and 6 minus 4 equals 2. If you perform long division, the remainder is the answer to the modulo operator. Jan, if you're back, I maybe say hi in the chat again. Oh yeah. So can you hear me now? Are your speakers working okay now? Okay. Yeah. Nice. So yeah, the third one answer is 2. Yep. Yeah, that's right. So did you get a brief idea of what the modulo operator does? It's basically the remainder. So 6 modulo 2 would be the remainder of the division 6 divided by 2, which is 0. So yeah, 6 modulo 2. That's right. So 6 modulo 2 plus 2 would be 2. To verify this, however, what you can do is also, let me just change the share to screen so you can see. Yeah, so now you should be able to see my BlueJ. And one way of checking whether or not you're right with answers like these is just figuring it out on basically giving Java to work for you. So since it's 6 modulo 2 plus 2, what you can do is just write in 6 modulo 2 plus 2, compile, and then run. Yeah, it's 2. Okay, I can just clear this and run it again. Yeah, it's 2. So the operation for this, for the third one would be 2, and you were right. Can you guess for the first one, what did it be? You can just type in chat whatever you think the answer for the first one is. Yep. Yeah. So you're completely right. So basically, the operator precedence takes multiplication first. It's right here on this slide. So multiplication, division, and modulo have the same preference, but they have a higher preference than the plus and negative operators. So in an expression, if there are no brackets and they're just multiplications, divisions, or modulo, they always get higher preference than positive or negative. So for the second one over here, the multiplication is done first, which would be 21, and then you add 2 to that, 23. So that's how you get. And yeah, you were completely right. These are the answers: 23, 23, 2, and 27 for the continuous ones. And then now let's go over some math functions. There's a inbuilt library for Java, which has all these functions, and the library name is math. How you call it is just you use math dot and then whatever the function you want to use. So can you guess what power does? I mean, pow, yeah. So basically, it's a power function. So what math.power of x comma y returns is x power y. So it would be, so the if the question or if you call the math.power function with, say, suppose math.power of 2 comma 3, it would be 2 to the power of 3. That would be 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. So I can go over that. Yeah, so if I just print out to give an example of math.pow of 2 comma 3, by that I can remove this line and then run this. Yeah, it would be 8. 8, since it's 2 to the power of 3, which is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. So it's basically the power of x to the power of y. And then the round function basically rounds it off to the nearest integer. So suppose that there's like a statement like this in Java, math.round of 4.5, and you run it. Okay, we can go with 4.6 for now, and then just to make it a bit easier to understand, 4.6, and then run it. It's 5. That's because it rounds it off to the nearest integer, and the nearest integer for 4.6 is 5 and not 4. So suppose it would be, suppose it was 4.3, right? And you run it, it should be 4, because the closest integer for 4.3 is 4 and not 5 this time. So that basically rounds it off to whatever the nearest integer is. And I have a question for you now. What would 4.5 be closest to? If you don't know and if your BlueJ is open, you can just search for it on, or use this command on BlueJ and try to tell me the answer. Okay, yeah, sure. I can give you some time to open BlueJ and try it out. Yeah. Christina is right. So basically, once you run it, it will be 5. So for 5 is returned for the above statement. That's because it rounds it up when it's 4.5. And then it basically, so that's the only one you kind of have to remember, because everything else is basically the closest one. But then for 4.5, it goes to the above one, not the lower one. And then there's also a math function for square root. It's basically the square root of whatever number x you put in. So suppose you wanted the square root of 2, it would be math.sqrt of 2, and that would give you the square root of 2, which is around 1.4. So let me just show that to you. That's capital M. Math.square root of 2. So that would be around 1.4. I can clear this. Usually, yeah, I should clear this. So yeah, that's 1.4. So there is also another way you can find the square root using the power function. So what would, so how do you use the power function to calculate the square root of 2? So yeah, if you're familiar with what square root is the power of, you can figure this out. Yeah, that is right. So basically, square root is square root of a number is basically the number to the power of 0.5. So you could also use the math.power function to calculate the square root of numbers instead of using math.sqrt. But math.sqrt basically makes it easier and more user readable. So if you type in 2, 0.5 and compile and run it is 1.4 and 1.4, basically the same thing. And then there's also a constant for pi in which the math library gives it to you. It's basically a constant. It's not a function. So you can, so in case anywhere in your code you want to use the pi value, right? You can just use math.pi instead of typing in 3.14, which is actually preferred, math.pi, because you don't want those stray numbers in your code. It's kind of, it makes it hard for the user to read it. And so suppose that the radius is 5, int radius equals 5. What, or rather, how would you calculate the area of the circle? I'm just typing it down because Christina does not have access to sound right now. So just so she can, she can also contribute and join in on this session. Yeah, so how do you calculate, what would you put in the system.out.println line to calculate the radius of, the area of a circle, given that the radius is 5? You can use the radius variable instead of, yeah, that is right. So, so the formula for area is pi times radius to the power of 2. So yeah, Yani is close, but then it's pi r squared and it's not pi r. So what would it be? How do you change that to display radius times radius instead of just radius? I mean, you can type in radius times radius, but then what other way can you use to basically get r squared instead of just typing down radius times radius? You're pretty close though. Okay, so yeah, I'll just go ahead and tell you. So it's basically math.py times math.pow, which gives you comma 2. So yeah, so that would be how you would calculate the radius, which are without actually typing down radius times radius, which is sort of tedious. So you just use the math function, radius comma 2. So this is basically this expression right here resolves to radius squared, which is what you want, pi r squared. So now if you run that, that's the radius 70, that's the area 78. That's how you would calculate. So yeah, what I wanted to describe there is basically the usage of the math.py constant. You can use that instead of just typing in 3.14 every single time. 3. Want you guys to code. I want you guys to use basically the scanner class, which you were taught. You just get used to it. So create a class called scanner tester, add a main method. It takes in 2 integers and a string. Basically, so the prompt for the first integer would be enter an integer, and the second one would be enter another integer. And then for the string, it's basically the operator, enter plus minus multiplication or division. You could also add the modulo sign. And then once you've taken all these 3 inputs, basically print them out in one line is what I want you guys to do. I can give you a couple of minutes, and then once you're done, you can tell me in the chat. If you're facing any problems, you can ask in the chat. And yeah, I'll just give you some time now. So you will also have to import the scanner class using the java.util.scanner. So basically the import statement takes in scanner and gives it to you, gives this class scanner tester access to scanner. So now you can just use scanner in the entire code and it'll work. And then how you would create a main method is by saying public static void main args. So now this is a main method, and so now I want you to basically take an input and print it out. Jan, are you having trouble with that, or do you have any questions? Okay, so I just got a question from Christina. Yeah, so she's asking, what does the static keyword here do exactly? So basically what it does is, usually in a class, if there are methods, yeah, the only way you can use the methods is by calling is by creating an object of the class and then calling that method on that object. But then what static does is it removes that precondition. Basically, you don't need the static. I mean, you don't need an object to call the static methods. So for math.pow or math.sqrt, right? You're not really creating an object of the math class, but you're using its function, which is sqrt. So basically, sqrt is a static function. And yeah, I'll type that down for Christina so she can get it too, because she doesn't have access to voice. Oh, usually it's preferred to have it at the top of the file, entire file, because it's easier to read it. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if it works. If it works over here, did you ask? Yeah, you can't have it. Java gives you an error. So yeah, just make sure that you have it on top of the file instead. So that's also a basic like code, I guess you could say, where all the users or coders or developers use this convention where they put in all the imports at the top of the file, because it's important to know what like what's the word what dependencies your program needs, right? So yeah, so just looking at this, you know that it needs scanner, and you you would not face problems later on because you know that it needs scanner now. Yeah, Java gives an error if it's down here. So yeah, for the static question asked previously, yeah, for having calling methods of a class, you'd usually need an object. But for static, you would not need that. Yeah, an example of a static method, I guess you could call is math.sqrt, which is a static function or method, static method, because you do not need to create a class or an object, create an object of math. So basically, so you don't say something like math new or math, I guess, equals new math. So you don't say that. You can just use the class's name, which is math, and then call those functions. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just go over, or I guess I'll just solve this problem and then see if you guys understand. And then if you have any questions, you can ask me. So yeah. So the first prompt. So the first prompt would be print line of, so you don't want to say print line because it goes over to the next line after this is printed. Basically, you want the user input to show up right next to the line. So you just use print for the prompts. And then it says enter an integer. But first we'll have to need, so what Jan did is right, but then since we want an integer here, right? Because we're asking for an integer. What you're doing basically converts whatever the user types into an integer, into a string. So it would, if the user types in 5, right, it would be a string and not a integer. So it would be like a character 5 instead of the number 5. So how you basically get an integer instead of a number is you just say, what's the error here? Okay, yeah, my bad. So yeah, so scanner scan, or I guess n, like Jan used, equals new scanner of system.n. So this creates a scanner, and that's pretty much how you create a scanner. But then now that you need an integer instead of a string, so what you did is right, but that's only when you want the input to be a string. So for an integer, you would create int, say a, or num1 equals in dot next int. So yeah, that's pretty similar to what you wrote down. It's basically for strings you just have next, but for integers you have next int. For doubles you have next double and stuff like that. So that's pretty intuitive. So yeah, good job trying to figure that out. And then for the next one, so for the next one you would have like, say, so since after this line, right, it's not, it doesn't go on to the next line, you can just have like that, because now it goes on to the next line. I think that's how it works. Yeah, now I can type enter a operator plus minus modulo multiplication or division, right? And then now that this is a string, right, because it's a character, so you would have like string and then say operator equals in dot next. So that's how you get a string, which you already did, which is pretty good. And now just change the line again and then ask for the second integer. So enter another integer, and then you basically want to save whatever the user enters. So that now you say num2 equals in dot next int, because it's an integer. And now you're done with, now you have all the inputs basically. Now I just wanted you to print them out using the system.out.println line. So in here you just have num1 and then maybe a space plus the second character, which is operator, plus and then a space and then a plus and then num2. So now this should work the way I expect it to. Yeah, so enter an integer and then now I said 2 and then it says enter an operator. Now I suppose I wanted to divide, right? I said divide and then enter an integer and then now 3. Now it's displays, so the last println line basically displays all the user input 2 divided by 3. Do you have any questions on that? So yeah, instead here, if I have a colon, it will be easier to read. But yeah, so this is how you print out stuff. Num1 basically is the integer one, and then there's a space because it looks better if there's a space, right, between operators. And then the operator, which is the string here, and then num2. Do you guys have any questions on that? Okay, yeah, good job. So that's how it works. So for this session, what we went over is basically the operator precedence, some math functions, and then the usage of some scanner class. Yeah, if you still have like a few doubts, you can ask me now, or like later on, if you get some doubts, you can ask me in the class or show up to my next sessions. And yeah, so I have a session tomorrow at Friday 2 p.m. And the next week's virtual essay session is going to be Jonathan's. So basically we alternate between each week. So this week it's me, next week it's Jonathan, and then it's me again. So that's how we go. That's how we go. And yeah, if you don't have any questions, we're done. Yeah, thank you too. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing up. And yeah, we're done. And I'll just close the meeting now. See you guys. Thank you.